Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about, I'm in Arizona now, but I'm originally from Chicago, and I wanted to talk about my Chicago Bulls. Now, for those of you that are basketball fans, you're probably familiar with the Bulls, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and maybe some of the other guys, Dennis Rodman, and winning 6 championships in 8 years. And I'm very excited because I think it's either on Netflix or maybe ESPN. But this summer, I believe in either May or June, there is going to be a documentary on TV about them, mainly just their last championship season. Because, and I'll get into it in a minute, but the 97-98 season, which was their last championship season before the beginning of the year, it was pretty obvious that was going to be, they were getting older, so they almost didn't win the championship that year. They kind of struggled for that last one. I was surprised they actually won. For the beginning of the season, you could tell that they were burned out. They were starting to show their age fatigue. But beside putting that beside the point, it was very obvious to the fans and to the organization that was going to be their last year together, their last championship, even if they did win. What happened was Phil Jackson, who was the coach of the Bulls, he actually coached the Bulls for many years to those. He started off as an assistant coach. I believe, was it the year before Doug Collins was their head coach and Phil Jackson was an assistant, I think just for a year, and then Doug Collins got fired after the 89 season, and then Phil Jackson was their head coach from 1989 until the end of the 1998 season. And the Bulls had that GM, Jerry Krause, that basically built those championship teams, and he was kind of a hard person to get along with. Phil Jackson, a lot of the players, it was the last year on their contracts. I think Rodman, his contract had already expired. They weren't even sure that they were going to bring him back, because I remember their 5th championship season, after the 97 season, there was a lot of talk about Rodman not being brought back, because he just caused a lot, even though he was a good player, his contract was up. And he did cause a lot of problems for them on and off the court, as good of a player as he was. But they decided to sign him for at least one more year. They could have won that last championship without him. He was a big part of their, the big three, Jordan, Rodman, and Pippen. He was a big part of their last 3 championship teams. They couldn't have done it without him. And, Scottie Pippen, his contract was up. Jordan's contract was up after that season. Judd Bushler, Steve Kerr, who is now the coach of the Golden State Warriors. And, even Scottie Pippen, he was frustrated with his contract. He was always, throughout all their championship years, at times he was frustrated and he was demanding to be traded. I remember, halfway through that season, he was demanding a trade. And it was made pretty obvious, Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause, the GM at the time, were butting heads. And I think Jerry Krause made it there was a problem because Jerry Krause felt like the players and the coaches were getting too much credit, and he felt like the credit wasn't getting shared, and he said, and again, he said it was taken out of context. I guess he said, players and, management, organizations, they win championships together. It's not just the players, but according to some of the players and Phil Jackson, they got pissed off because supposedly Jerry Krause said organizations win the championship, he was trying to give all the credit to the management. So who knows? It could be, it could have gone either way. It could have been a little bit of both. But Jerry Krause claimed that he was misquoted on that. He had made, I guess he had some private discussion with Phil Jackson. I don't know if it was behind closed doors or over the phone, that he wasn't going to be renewing his contract. And I guess Phil Jackson, had kind of been in agreement. I think he kind of knew that it probably would have been the last year for the Bulls anyway, because of their age. They were getting older, and maybe he was looking for a challenge to do something new. Obviously, he went to the Lakers and won more championships for the Lakers as their head coach. And I guess it was a mutual agreement that that he would, you're not going to renew my contract. That's fine. We'll make a mutual split. So their first meeting back from the summer, Phil Jackson, the coach, had handed out their playbooks for the year, and on the front cover of the plans, it said that the title was The Last Dance. So it was pretty obvious that was going to be their last year together. After that season, that was when Jordan decided. Well, the next year was the lockout season. And after they won their last championship, it was kind of funny in a way because they all were kind of, you could tell they were trying to cover it up. They won their, sixth championship in 8 years, and they were interviewing all the players, the coaches, even Jerry Krause, and they were all, you could tell, like, they didn't really know what to say, like, they all knew that they were over, but they weren't coming back. But they all said, oh, yeah, we're just kind of rejoicing in the moment for now, but we'll have to think about it. We'll have to see where, what takes place during the off season with the lockout. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I'd love to come back and do it all over again," but we'll have to see. We'll have to see what other options are out there because a lot of their contracts were up, and so I think Dennis Rodman they didn't renew his contract and made it clear that was the end of him. During the off season, and Jordan had said that he wasn't going to play he decided to retire for the second time. He said he was going to come back as long as Scottie Pippen was still on the team and as long as Phil Jackson wasn't the coach. And this guy, Tim Floyd, ended up coaching. I think he was from Iowa State, basketball coach there. And there was talk about him becoming the head coach, which he obviously did become their head coach. But Jordan already said, like, oh, I'm only going to play for Phil Jackson. I'm not going to play for Tim Floyd or any other coach. So right before the lockout season began, I think it was right in the new year, January 99, he had announced his second retirement, and Scottie Pippen ended up signing with the Houston Rockets. Jud Buechler went to the Pistons, and Steve Kerr ended up going to the Spurs, San Antonio Spurs, and Jackson ended up, I think after they won their last championship, like we already knew Phil Jackson was gone. He had already cleared out his office. I think they showed him driving away in his car and not commenting to the reporters, the media. And, I oftentimes wonder how some people think the Bulls still would have gone on winning, but I'm not so sure on that. Because, that last season, you could tell it could have been the distraction of not knowing about what laid ahead of them in the future. That was a distraction from the beginning of the season, but they really struggled. Of course, they didn't have Scottie Pippen. I believe Scottie Pippen missed the first 20 or 30 games of the season, so they were struggling without him. But through the first 15 games, I think they were 8-7 or 9-7. It took them. They struggled just to keep their record above 500. But then once they got Scottie Pippen back, they went on a huge winning streak. They still won 62 games, which is very impressive, and they won the championship once again. But it was definitely a struggle, but I have at times wonder if Jordan hadn't retired. I do believe he would have gotten burned out quicker. I think if he had stayed in the league, if he hadn't retired the first time, even if they won in 94, 95, I think he probably would have ended up retiring probably 96. So he probably would have gotten burned out sooner. And, the Houston Rockets, they ended up winning the 2 years the Bulls were out. And the guy who used to play for the Rockets, Vernon Maxwell, he did make a great point. It is true. He says, he said, even if the Bulls had Jordan, he said, I think we still would have beat them in 94, 95, because he said, he said, they could never match up against us. It is true. They did dominate, even though they only played, each other 2 times during the year, because, Eastern Conference, Western Conference. The Rockets did beat them majority of the time with Hakeem Olajuwon. That was the problem with the Bulls. That was the argument that Vernon Maxwell made, is they just they couldn't match up against us because they did have a lot of the teams the Bulls beat. They didn't really have a good center, the opposing team, and that is true from what I saw over the years. The Houston Rockets, San Antonio Spurs had good centers, whereas the Bulls, Bill Cartwright, Will Perdue, Stacey King, Luke Longley, Bill Wennington, they always just had mediocre centers. They never had really all-star centers. The Bulls, their centers, I don't think they could have controlled Hakeem Olajuwon, and I do agree with that. The Bulls, they probably would have lost to the Rockets in 94 and 95, and then, if the Bulls had made it to the finals in 99 against the Spurs, at that point, the Bulls were so burned out. The Spurs were a younger team, and David Robinson, a very good center for the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think the Bulls centers could have controlled him. So yeah, I mean, I think what the way it panned out, I think is probably what would have happened anyways. A lot of times I thought, oh, 6 championships in 8 years. Could they have won? All those 2 years Jordan was out. Could they have won 8 in a row? Could they have gone on to win more? And now looking back on it, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it panned out the way it was meant to be. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Getting back to what I said about the Bulls' last championship season, since they knew it was pretty, determined that was going to be their last season together, so they gave a camera crew permission to follow them around for the whole season. And I saw the trailer. The trailer is about 3 minutes long, and they did show like one trailer or one. Within the trailer, they did show like one part where Phil Jackson went like into the locker room, like slammed the door behind him, and then there was one where Jordan was walking back to the locker room or somewhere and kicked a chair. And so yeah, there was a lot of drama that last season. And a funny story that Steve Kerr, who is now he was a second string guard, bench guard, great shooter, and he hit the winning shot for the Bulls' 5th championship against the Utah Jazz. But a funny story that he brought up about Dennis Rodman, because Dennis Rodman you oftentimes wonder how he did it. He was a great player. You wonder if he could have even been a better player if he hadn't stayed out like half the night drinking and clubbing and gambling and partying. But there was a story about how he left, I guess, for like 48 hours without, there was no way for anybody to get in touch with him. I think it was their last championship when, because they played the Utah Jazz. I think he went to Vegas, just didn't ask anybody's permission, just did it. And I know Michael Jordan wasn't too happy about that. And then there was also a story that last championship season where he was going to go out. I don't know if it was clubbing or drinking, gambling, or a combination of the three. But Phil Jackson took Steve Kerr and like Luke Longley and I think Judd Bushler. It turned out the next day, the starters, which Dennis Rodman was a starter, the starters didn't have to practice. It was only the bench players that had to practice. So he said, yeah, just keep an eye on Dennis, make sure he doesn't drink too much, maybe make sure he doesn't get into too much trouble. And it turned out that they were out like all night. And Dennis Rodman, I guess, dropped them off at the practice facility, wherever they were practicing. And he's like, oh, I'll see you guys later at game time. He's like, I'm going to go to sleep. And I guess Phil Jackson saw Dennis Rodman dropping them off. And it was like 7 in the morning. And Phil was like, oh, what time did you guys go to bed? And I guess Steve Kerr told him, he said, oh, we didn't go to bed. We just got back. We were out all night. And he said, yeah, Dennis is going back to the hotel to sleep to take a nap. And, he's like, now we got to practice. And Steve Kerr said that, yeah, practice did not go too well that day. But, yeah, you oftentimes wonder how much better, like with Al Iverson, too. You wonder how much better some of these players would have been. I know Al Iverson was great, but, like, he had Rodman was like that, too. Like, sometimes he skipped practice or altogether he didn't show up. Al Iverson was like that, too. And you oftentimes wonder if these guys had really given it their full 100% potential, how much better players they could have been. But yeah, I think it's going to be airing in June, that special, and I can't wait to see that. About 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, there was a documentary on Netflix about the Bad Boys, the Detroit Pistons, and that was very interesting to watch. That was like a 2-hour special. That was very interesting to watch, the building up of those back-to-back championship teams. And yeah, I'm hoping that but this isn't, I think, throughout the whole year. This is just like covering the last championship year, which was very dramatic. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. I think that's coming on either on ESPN or Netflix sometime in June. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, a lot of people knew that was going to be their last year. And even when they were on the Bulls were on the road, because of Jordan, how good that team was, they sold out crowds everywhere they went. People went just to see Jordan. Even if their team lost, it was still an experience to see the things that the magic that he did on the court, the dunking and just the amazing all-around player that he was. So that's all I have to say about that. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all real soon with another great video. Have a great week, everybody. Talk to you all later. Bye.